Each day, the darker side of humanity reveals itself, showcasing the inexplicable ways in which people can inflict harm on one another. This unsettling reality is a grim aspect of life that we cannot afford to overlook. As I delve into the murky waters of crime, I aim to uncover the most shocking narratives and explore the motivations behind such horrific actions. I am Michael, and today, I bring you an astonishing true crime tale. Christmas Eve morning in Laconia, New Hampshire, was meant to be filled with happiness and celebration, but at apartment 67 on Blueberry Lane, a sinister reality was unfolding. At approximately 8 a.m., a young girl stood outside, her voice urgent as she spoke on the phone. Moments later, her grandmother, Sherry Connor, burst out of the apartment, panic etched on her face as she screamed, "He's not breathing!" Paramedics arrived swiftly, carrying the small, lifeless form of 5-year-old Dennis Vaughn Jr. to the ambulance. He was transported to the hospital in a desperate attempt to save him. But tragically, it was already too late. Initially, the circumstances surrounding his death remained a mystery. But as law enforcement began their investigation, unsettling truths began to surface. Neighbors had overheard unsettling occurrences. Social workers had filed reports of concern, but no one had intervened in time. Now, the chilling reality of what transpired behind those closed doors was finally emerging. Dennis Vaughn Jr., affectionately known as Boo by his mother, Danielle Vaughn, entered this world on June 11, 2014, in Laconia, New Hampshire. From the moment Danielle cradled him in her arms, she was entranced by the unique birthmark that adorned his head, a small tuft of hair that contrasted vividly with his bright blonde locks. Boo blossomed into a spirited and loving little boy. His brown eyes sparkled with joy. Childhood photographs capture his adventurous essence, whether he was joyfully splashing in a pool or playing gleefully in the snow. Yet, Danielle Vaughn's own upbringing was fraught with difficulties. Her mother, Sherry Connor, exhibited a volatile temperament, prone to explosive outbursts and erratic behavior. At just 15 years old, Danielle found herself placed in the care of her mother's friend, Dennis Vaughn, a man nearly 50 years her senior and already married. Their relationship took a romantic twist despite the glaring age disparity, and within a few years, Danielle discovered she was pregnant. The couple eventually tied the knot and welcomed 4 children, the youngest being Dennis Vaughn Jr. Unfortunately, their marriage was plagued by strife. Dennis Vaughn Sr. exerted a suffocating control over Danielle, often resorting to violence. Both spiraled into drug addiction, leading to a series of arrests. In 2016, law enforcement executed a raid on their home, resulting in the loss of custody of their children. For Danielle, this initiated a grueling 4-year struggle. Fueled by determination to reclaim her children, she made monumental changes in her life. She quit drugs, attended mandated appointments, and secured stable housing away from her husband. By 2017, the court awarded custody of Boo and his siblings to their maternal grandmother, Sherry Connor. Despite her apprehensions regarding her mother's troubled past, Danielle hoped Sherry would provide a nurturing environment for the children. However, during her visits, Danielle began to notice alarming signs. Her children sometimes bore bruises, and one child had even suffered a concussion. Sherry always had explanations, but Danielle's unease grew. One day, she noticed distinct finger-shaped bruises on their chins. This sight was a haunting reminder of her own childhood, when her mother had once gripped her in the same way, lifting her off the ground while screaming in rage. Danielle also observed that the children seemed malnourished. When she visited them for Christmas in 2018, she was appalled by the squalid conditions of their home. It was a scene of neglect, with both human and animal waste littering the floors. The refrigerator and cabinets were padlocked, denying the children access to food. In their desperation, they resorted to drinking from the toilet and using a bucket as a restroom. Alarmed for their safety, Danielle made multiple reports. Despite numerous calls to the New Hampshire Division of Children, Youth, and Families, Danielle Vaughn's concerns for her children were consistently dismissed or deemed unfounded. One fateful day, a shocking voicemail from her mother shattered her fragile sense of security. Through the static of the recording, the unmistakable sound of a child being struck echoed, followed by the agonizing cries of her son, Dennis Vaughn Jr. In a fit of rage, Sherry Connor screamed, "I hate you, you dirty dog! I can't wait for someone to take you away." In July 2019, Sherry took her 8-year-old grandson to a campground, where she cruelly tied him to a chair with duct tape and abandoned him overnight. Concerned campers witnessed the scene and promptly contacted the police. This alarming incident led the New Hampshire Division of Children, Youth, and Families to intervene, removing the child on an emergency basis. However, to Danielle's utter dismay, only one of her children was taken away. The remaining 3 were left in Sherry's care. Desperate for her children's safety, Danielle called authorities daily, pleading for them to place her remaining children somewhere safe, anywhere, but with her mother. Tragically, on the morning of December 24, 2019, her worst fears were realized. Emergency responders rushed to Sherry's home after 5-year-old Dennis was found unresponsive. Despite frantic efforts at Lakes Region General Hospital, he was pronounced dead. The circumstances surrounding his death raised immediate suspicions. Investigators from the New Hampshire State Police Major Crimes Unit meticulously combed through the home, collecting evidence well into the day, as the reality of the tragedy began to sink in. Neighbors had long been troubled by the chaos emanating from Sherry's apartment. Joyce Hendrickson, who lived next door, recalled the frequent sounds of shouting, banging, and other unsettling noises that pierced the walls. Sharing the cramped space were Sherry and her 3 grandsons, a granddaughter, and 2 dogs. Over the 2 years Joyce resided next door, her concern deepened, leading her to report the escalating situation to local authorities. Laconia police records confirmed multiple visits to the residence in the months leading up to Dennis's tragic death. Joyce's son, Phil, also noted distressing signs. In February, he saw one of the children outside, barefoot in the biting cold. By June, Phil observed even more alarming behavior. Taking action, he recorded a video and filed a complaint with the Laconia police. Officers responded to the apartment on June 20th for a juvenile-related matter, but the situation remained unresolved. In August and October, police also responded to complaints regarding the animals in the home, raising further concerns about the living conditions. On Christmas Eve morning, Phil witnessed Dennis's sister outside around 8 a.m., urgently speaking to 911. Moments later, he saw Sherry rushing out of the apartment, her voice filled with panic as she exclaimed, "He's not breathing!" Paramedics from the Laconia Fire Department arrived, their urgency palpable. They carried Dennis out of the apartment and into an ambulance, which sped away, leaving a haunting silence in its wake. Meanwhile, Danielle was at work, cleaning at Elliott Hospital, her world about to shatter. Less than an hour into her shift, a state police sergeant approached, asking for a private conversation. The chilling moment when he looked her in the eye and uttered the words, "Dennis is dead," would forever haunt her. An autopsy was conducted on Dennis, but authorities withheld the findings from the public. Officials from the Assistant Attorney General's office stated that the cause and manner of death were still under investigation, requiring further studies for clarity. However, the severity of Dennis's injuries prompted authorities to remove his surviving siblings from Sherry's custody as a precautionary measure. A court document later revealed that significant bruising on Dennis's body played a crucial role in the decision to revoke Sherry's guardianship. Authorities informed the court that Sherry was now the primary suspect in Dennis's death. 5 months later, the Attorney General's office released Dennis's cause of death, homicide, due to blunt force trauma to his head and neck. Yet, despite this grim revelation, no arrests were made, and no suspects were publicly identified. The case stagnated, enveloped in a heavy cloak of silence and unanswered questions. By February 2022, more than 2 years after Dennis's tragic death, the quest for justice was far from over. Danielle Vaughn was still grappling with the pain of loss, desperately seeking justice for her son, Dennis Vaughn Jr., affectionately known as Boo. In an emotional interview with local news, she articulated her frustration and heartbreak, sharing her determination to navigate the complicated legal landscape. Having regained custody of her other children, Danielle remained vigilant, regularly checking in with the Attorney General's office. As the statute of limitations loomed ominously, set to expire in December 2022, her resolve only deepened. In a bold move, Danielle filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Child Services. She believed this was her only recourse to hold the state accountable for Boo's tragic death. The lawsuit, an extensive 85-page document, meticulously outlined her relentless attempts to seek help for her children. The lawsuit detailed 27 reports of suspected family violence, compiled between 2017 and 2019. These reports, alarmingly, came from a variety of professionals, teachers, nurses, and law enforcement officers. The earliest report emerged on August 2, 2017, signaling the beginning of a tragic narrative. This initial report described a harrowing incident at a campground. Witnesses recounted how Sherry Connor, Boo's grandmother, allegedly grabbed him by the neck and face, struck him, and threw a liquid in his face before dragging him into a tent. Disturbed by the child's screams, onlookers feared he was in desperate need of medical attention. Yet, authorities dismissed the report as unfounded, failing to interview the reporting officer or any witnesses. In a further breach of protocol, when Child Services questioned the children, Sherry was present, casting a shadow over the legitimacy of the inquiry. By early 2018, Child Services had received multiple alarming reports regarding Boo's older brother, who was reportedly being beaten. Two of these reports originated from Elliott Hospital, where a nurse meticulously documented the child's extensive bruising. In April, Danielle reached out to the police, desperately pleading for someone to check on her children, as Sherry was preventing her from seeing them. However, when officers arrived, they reported finding the children apparently happy and healthy. Between September and December 2019, the situation for Boo deteriorated further, prompting 9 additional reports concerning his alarming condition. Callers described disturbing symptoms. Boo was vomiting, had scabs on his head, and exhibited bruises on his head, neck, and arms. Witnesses consistently painted a grim picture of the Vaughn children's living conditions. Sherry faced accusations of slapping and kicking them, locking them in a dark basement without light or bathroom facilities, forcing them to relieve themselves in a 5-gallon bucket, and making them endure cold baths. Boo's sister was reportedly forced to sleep in a laundry basket. The punishments inflicted upon Boo and his siblings were harsh and relentless. They were made to run up and down stairs in diapers as a form of discipline, according to the lawsuit. At just 4 years old, Boo was often confined to a high chair for extended periods, even overnight. In an act of neglect, Sherry allegedly fed him expired canned food straight from the can, without so much as heating it. In January 2019, a concerned neighbor alerted the police about loud yelling and banging emanating from Sherry's apartment. The caller described the chaos, saying, "Can I get an officer to 103 Blueberry Lane, apartment 67? I don't know if this lady is beating the crap out of her kid. It's 11 at night, and there's so much banging. All you can hear is her screaming at her kids. I have videos of them outside, barefoot for an hour in the winter. It happens all the time. I don't know if she's a student of hell or what, but she won't stop. All you hear are kids screaming. I told her I was reporting her. I think you might want to come here for safety. I have proof." However, when the police arrived, they classified the call as a mere noise complaint. Sherry told the responding officer she was disciplining one of the children for urinating on the wall by making him run up and down the stairs 10 times. After speaking with the child, who confirmed her account, the officer merely advised Sherry to be more mindful of the noise and departed. Yet, the troubling pattern of neglect and abuse continued to unfold. After the officer spoke with Boo, who corroborated the troubling narrative, the response was disheartening. The officer simply advised Sherry to be mindful of the noise, leaving behind a growing sense of unease. Further documentation revealed a disturbing pattern of neglect. Reports from a school social worker indicated that Boo and his siblings often arrived at school bearing bruises. Sherry's history of substance abuse was well known, and many suspected she harbored undiagnosed mental health issues that exacerbated the perilous circumstances surrounding the children. In a disturbing revelation, Sherry Connor believed the boys were under the influence of the devil, a presence she ominously associated with their father. She insisted that she had found God and was determined to cleanse her children of their father's malevolent hold. Authorities urged Sherry to be mindful of the noise emanating from her home. Yet reports began to paint a troubling picture. A school social worker noted that Boo and his siblings often arrived at school bearing bruises, a silent testimony to their home life. Sherry's past was marred by a history of substance abuse, leading many to suspect she was grappling with undiagnosed mental health issues. Her belief that the boys were possessed by the devil, linked to their father, only deepened the concerns surrounding her stability. Claiming to have found God, Sherry insisted she was on a mission to rid the boys of their father's influence through spiritual means. An internal email from the school revealed growing concerns that Child Services were dismissing these troubling reports. Just 9 days after this email was sent, tragedy struck. Boo was dead. The tragedy surrounding Boo's case was further compounded by an internal email from the school, highlighting grave concerns over Child Services' inaction regarding alarming reports. Just 9 days after this email was circulated, Boo was dead. The ensuing lawsuit alleged that in the days leading up to his tragic demise, Sherry confided in Danielle, expressing that Boo was experiencing frightening hallucinations. This unsettling revelation prompted questions about the environment Boo was subjected to, as his well-being was increasingly overlooked. In a heart-wrenching turn of events, Sherry Connor revealed that her grandson, Dennis Vaughn Jr., known affectionately as Boo, was unable to eat or drink. In a chilling moment before his untimely death, Sherry claimed that Boo had expressed a haunting awareness of his fate, stating that the devil was coming for him. Tragically, Boo passed away on Christmas Eve, leaving a void that would forever linger. In the aftermath of his death, a social services worker documented Sherry's explosive reaction. She shouted in anguish, insisting that the police were indifferent to the plight of children, accusing them of ruining Christmas for her family. Meanwhile, Danielle Vaughn, Boo's mother, found herself overwhelmed with deep frustration, grappling with the loss of her beloved son. The Laconia Police Department neglected to utilize its social media channels to request information, while the governor faced condemnation for not advocating for Boo, as he had for other child victims in New Hampshire. Unlike 3 other cases that prompted an official state review, Boo's murder received scant attention. A local news report chillingly referred to Boo as the 5-year-old homicide victim that no one was talking about. In the days leading to his death, Boo's condition deteriorated alarmingly. He was unable to eat or drink. Sherry reportedly claimed that Boo had sensed his impending death, telling her that the devil was coming for him. Following Boo's tragic passing on Christmas Eve, a social services worker noted Sherry's reaction. She shouted that the police didn't care about children and were ruining Christmas. This outburst was a stark reflection of the emotional turmoil enveloping the family, and Danielle expressed her profound frustration at the lack of action surrounding Boo's case. This tragic case prompted an official state review. However, despite the surrounding turmoil, Boo's murder seemed to fade into obscurity. A poignant news report highlighted the stark reality that Boo had become the 5-year-old homicide victim that no one wanted to discuss, a haunting reminder of the injustices that often go unnoticed. The unresolved nature of Boo's case resonated deeply with those aware of similar injustices, notably the lingering questions surrounding the death of 19-month-old Ala Reynolds in Maine. That case had also remained unanswered for over a decade. By this time, Sherry had relocated to Maine and was willing to communicate with the New Hampshire Bulletin via Facebook Messenger. She confessed that she had only engaged with investigators out of fear of losing custody of her children, only for them to be placed in an even more precarious situation. In memory of Boo, the local community rallied together. Flyers bearing the message, "Don't forget Boo," adorned public spaces. One determined woman even marched to the mayor's office, clutching a photo of Boo, demanding action. Yet many criticized the Attorney General's office for failing to continue seeking public assistance in Boo's case. Following her interview with the detective, Sherry Connor made a definitive choice. She would no longer speak to anyone. The harsh treatment she received left her feeling distrustful, a sentiment that echoed painfully in her words. In her defense, Sherry claimed ignorance of the 25 or more reports detailing suspected abuse against her. She argued that the Child Services Agency had failed to provide adequate food, financial support, or the necessary resources to care for her 4 children. When the conversation turned to the tragic death of her 5-year-old son, Dennis Vaughn Jr., whom she affectionately called Boo, Sherry attempted to redirect the narrative. She presented a medical record from 2016, as if it could absolve her of responsibility. Before she had custody of the children, the records indicated that Boo had been treated for dehydration. Sherry claimed he had a drinking problem, alleging that he would drink from the toilet and the dog's water bowl, even resorting to soaking his pajamas in water to suck on them at night. While she acknowledged that Boo had been ill prior to his death, she failed to specify what symptoms he had exhibited. Instead, she suggested that mold in her apartment might have contributed to his decline. In a further attempt to explain away the bruising discovered on Boo's head, Sherry placed the blame on a paramedic, a desperate move to deflect culpability in a case that was already steeped in tragedy. In a shocking claim, Sherry Connor asserted that the child had suffered an accidental injury when she allegedly hit his head on the door while carrying him out. Despite being confronted with Boo's official death certificate, which clearly indicated blunt force trauma as the cause of death, she stubbornly maintained that he had succumbed to natural causes. Yet, the community, fueled by grief and outrage, continued to demand justice for Boo. As the tragic anniversary of Boo's murder approached, candlelit vigils were organized every Friday to honor his memory. These gatherings aimed to renew focus on the case and show unwavering support for Boo's surviving family members. Finally, on Friday, August 16, 2024, the New Hampshire State Police, in collaboration with the Laconia Police Department, announced the long-anticipated arrest of Sherry Connor, aged 61. As the community mourned, vigils were held every Friday to commemorate the 4-year anniversary of Boo's homicide. Supporters gathered to renew attention to the case and display solidarity with Boo's surviving family members. Then, on Friday, August 16, 2024, the New Hampshire State Police and Laconia Police Department announced a significant breakthrough. Sherry Connor, now 61, was arrested, facing a myriad of charges including manslaughter, negligent homicide, 6 counts of first-degree assault, 1 count of second-degree assault, and 4 counts of witness tampering. Although the official statement refrained from naming the victim, it was clear that Sherry was finally being held accountable for Boo's tragic death. A court appearance was scheduled for Sherry, though the specific date remained undisclosed, as new details surrounding Boo's death began to surface. During Sherry's arraignment that following Monday, authorities revealed startling findings from Boo's autopsy. The young boy bore 60 contusions and abrasions across his body, with 18 of those injuries concentrated on his head alone. The medical examiner determined that many of these injuries had been inflicted just hours before Boo's untimely death. It was reported that on the day of his death, Sherry had flown into a rage when Boo left clothes on the floor. As punishment, she forced him to wear the clothing he had neglected to pick up and made him run in place. When he finally collapsed from exhaustion, she unleashed a torrent of violence, kicking him and striking him on the head and neck with a broom. Once the broom shattered from the force of her blows, Sherry stomped on him mercilessly, then covered his frail body with a blanket, leaving him unattended for hours. Later that same day, despite Boo suffering from a fever of 104 degrees, incontinence and hallucinations, Sherry neglected to seek any medical attention for him. In a heartrending moment, Boo's suffering went unanswered for far too long, a haunting reminder of the cruelty that unfolded within the walls of their home. By this time, Sherry had relocated to Maine, where she reluctantly agreed to speak with the New Hampshire Bulletin via Facebook Messenger. She confessed that she had only spoken to investigators once, and the weight of her silence hung heavy in the air, echoing the tragedy that had transpired. In a tragic misunderstanding, Dennis Vaughn Jr. mistook a plastic bag for a Christmas present, grasping at the fleeting joy it represented. Instead of offering comfort, Sherry Connor delivered a chilling message, telling him that the devil was coming to take him away. Just hours later, he succumbed to the horrors that surrounded him. Dennis's surviving siblings came forward, corroborating the horrific abuse and painting a grim picture of life under Sherry's oppressive rule. The district attorney painted a harrowing portrait of the torture the children endured. They were forced to hold their legs in the air, while Sherry stomped on them mercilessly. If they failed to comply, their punishment included frigid ice-cold baths. The torment didn't stop there. The children were ordered to run naked up and down the stairs for hours on end. Hot sauce was cruelly applied to their genitals, and Sherry took pleasure in holding their heads under water, smothering them with pillows, and depriving them of food.